you know what? They should let Trump and Hunter sentence each other. Wouldn't that be fun?
Jimmy Kimmel opened his late-night stage with a rare seriousness before the humor cut in. And from the moment his monologue began, it was clear he wasn't holding back. The tension of President Donald Trump's second term was already thick in the country after his victory over Kamala Harris. And Kimmel chose that very moment, only a few months into the renewed presidency, to unleash a blistering commentary that was equal parts satire, indignation, and incredulity. What made this moment so striking was the combination of timing and tone. Here was a late-night comedian stepping into the role of commentator, tackling the early failures of a returning president whose first term had already fractured the nation. With every joke layered over exasperation, Kimmel dissected Trump's decisions, his demeanor, and above all the swirl of scandal that had erupted almost instantly after his second inauguration. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. The country was still reeling from the unusual reality that Trump had defeated Kamala Harris, a campaign that many thought would shift the United States into a new generational era of politics. Instead, the electorate watched a familiar figure return, bringing with him not just his characteristic bravado, but also a renewed set of controversies that this time hit harder and faster than before. Kimmel tapped into that disillusionment, reminding viewers of how campaign promises quickly melted into confusion, chaos, and erratic governance. For many Americans, hearing him outline the stark contrast between what was said on the campaign trail and what was unfolding in Washington crystallized their own frustrations. The power of Kimmel's takedown wasn't simply in the content, but in its delivery. He layered irony with disbelief, highlighting how within just a few months, Trump's administration was stumbling into the same pitfalls that defined his first tenure. Kimmel underscored the rapid unraveling of political stability by calling out reckless executive decisions, haphazard staffing choices, and public statements that seemed more like provocations than policy. The fact that these blunders appeared in such quick succession gave his monologue urgency, as though he was sounding an alarm on behalf of an audience that was beginning to feel its optimism dim. At the core of Kimmel's attack was the charge of hypocrisy. The nation had barely settled into the second Trump era when whispers of scandal once again took center stage. Rumors about alleged secret affairs had begun circulating, and what made them particularly explosive was that they were framed against Trump's relationship with Melania, the First Lady who had already weathered endless speculation and public scrutiny during the first term. Kimmel brought these rumors into the spotlight with characteristic wit, but beneath the laughter was an unmistakable seriousness. He painted the picture of a president supposedly renewed by victory, yet already compromised by behavior that betrayed trust. The juxtaposition, policy chaos on one hand, personal scandal on the other, wasn't lost on viewers, and Kimmel made sure to underscore how the two were intertwined. For late-night television, which often serves as a pressure valve for the national mood, this was a watershed moment. It wasn't the first time Kimmel had taken on Trump, but the second-term context made it different. This wasn't the beginning of an experiment with outsider leadership. It was a return to patterns that Americans already knew well. His audience, many of whom had endured years of bitter political division, tuned in not just for humor, but for validation that what they were witnessing wasn't normal. Kimmel's monologue became a mirror reflecting the disbelief of a public that had hoped for a reset but found themselves plunged into déjà vu. What elevated the moment further was how Kimmel shifted from the personal scandals to the broader implications. He emphasized that while the affairs made for salacious headlines, they also spoke to a larger culture of dishonesty and distraction that plagued the White House. By drawing a line between the private allegations and the public dysfunction, Kimmel suggested that the same disregard for boundaries and accountability that marked Trump's personal life was seeping into governance. It was a bold framing, one that treated scandal not as tabloid fodder but as evidence of an ethos that could shape national decisions. The laughter that rippled through his studio audience was tinged with exasperation. People laughed because Kimmel's delivery made the absurdities tolerable, but beneath the humor lay the uneasy recognition that these absurdities were real. The idea of a president, only months into a second term, already facing whispers of betrayal against his spouse while failing to control the machinery of government was both ridiculous and alarming. Kimmel thrived in that space, where the comedic and the catastrophic intertwined, reminding viewers that humor was not just entertainment, but also a coping mechanism for political fatigue. The timing of his monologue also carried symbolic weight. Trump's victory over Kamala Harris had been framed by supporters as proof of resilience, a comeback against the odds. Yet Kimmel stripped away that triumphant veneer, showing that a win at the ballot box didn't erase character flaws or governance failures. By addressing the administration's troubles so early, he emphasized that the nation was not dealing with isolated missteps, but with a pattern re-emerging almost immediately. For critics of Trump, this was a vindication of their warnings. For supporters, it was an uncomfortable reminder of the turbulence they had chosen to endure again. What Kimmel achieved in those moments was a blending of entertainment and civic commentary. He reminded his viewers that the presidency is not insulated from satire, and that humor can be one of the sharpest tools in holding leaders accountable. Every joke landed with the weight of a question. How had the country returned to this cycle? The implication was that democracy itself had delivered the outcome. And now citizens were left to grapple with the consequences of their collective choice. Kimmel's words didn't simply criticize Trump. They challenged the electorate to reflect on why the turbulence of the first term had been overlooked in favor of repeating history. The focus on Melania added another layer of complexity. Kimmel's accusations framed her as both a figure of sympathy and an emblem of the contradictions within the Trump brand. While the president projected strength and loyalty on the campaign trail, rumors of betrayal in his private life created a contrast that couldn't be ignored. Kimmel drew on that dissonance to highlight how image and reality often diverged, and how the personal could so easily undermine the political. The implication was not just about Trump's marriage, but about the broader illusion of control he tried to maintain. By exposing those cracks, Kimmel invited his audience to see the presidency not as a fortress, but as a fragile, deeply flawed structure. In doing so, he underscored the precariousness of the moment. A president only months into a renewed term, already embroiled in whispers of scandal and already mismanaging the machinery of government, signaled a long and turbulent road ahead. Kimmel's monologue, while filled with jokes, carried the weight of a warning. It suggested that if such chaos defined the beginning, the remainder could be even more unstable. That sense of foreboding was part of why the moment resonated so deeply. It wasn't just about what was happening, but about what it foreshadowed. For many, Kimmel's takedown felt like a cathartic release. It gave voice to frustrations that were building in the national psyche. While political commentators parsed policy and pollsters dissected numbers, Kimmel tapped into emotion, capturing the disbelief and fatigue of ordinary Americans. His platform allowed him to frame the political moment not in sterile terms, but in human ones, filled with irony, outrage, and exasperated humor. That combination made his critique stick, because it resonated not just intellectually, but viscerally. The cultural implications were profound. Kimmel reminded viewers that late-night comedy could be more than just a distraction. It could serve as a form of accountability, a way of challenging the powerful through ridicule. In a democracy where leaders are chosen by the people, ridicule becomes a tool of the people, a reminder that authority is not immune to mockery. By tearing down Trump's facade so soon into his second term, Kimmel asserted that no victory, no matter how decisive, could shield a leader from scrutiny. The president, despite his office, was still subject to the laughter and disbelief of the public. That evening, the studio audience may have laughed, but the echoes of Kimmel's monologue carried into living rooms across the country. People who felt powerless to change the course of national politics found in his words a sense of solidarity, a reassurance that they were not alone in their disillusionment. The allegations of secret affairs, the bumbling missteps of the administration, the déjà vu of chaos, all of it was reframed as a shared experience, one that could be processed through laughter even as it weighed heavily on the future. The most striking aspect was the sense that this was only the beginning. Kimmel's critique illuminated the cracks forming in the early days of Trump's second presidency, but the real implication was how wide those cracks might grow. If scandals and failures defined the opening act, what could the second act hold? The question hung in the air, unspoken but palpable. leaving viewers with both a sense of dread and a determination to stay alert. But they also carried the weight of history in the making. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us. What are your thoughts on Jimmy Kimmel calling out Trump's alleged secret affairs publicly? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.